One person, one like. Welcome. Hey, Jesse, good. How are you tonight? Christopher, how's it going, buddy? I'm doing well. All right. I've got some really good, I'm pretty excited about tonight. Synth, I hope you like the book. It's an amazing book. It's a really fast read, unfortunately, because once you get into it, you're not going to want to put it down. Delirium, how are you, buddy? Yeah, it's really, really good. Super good. Let me check my messages and make sure Janie's coming tonight. What's up, Charlie? How are you, my friend? Where the fuck is it? Okay. There she is. I was just checking to see if you were coming tonight, Janie. I'm so glad you're here with us tonight. Troy, how are you? Doyle Thorne, how are you? M. Brown, how are you doing? It truly is an amazing book. Danny Sanders, how are you, buddy? Arthur Ostrander, Lisa McDonald. If you guys like, it's actually the second book in the series. So Hunt for the Skinwalker is the first part. You don't need to read them in order, though. What's up, Tommy? David Thompson. So I've got quite the collection of experiences tonight to share with you guys. We hit 94,000 subscribers the other night. T-Baby, how are you? Catwoman, how are you tonight? I wonder if Tigger is still outside my door. I'm not going to pick him up, but maybe I can coax him in. Nope. He has been the most annoyingest dink all day. Coming in, coming out, looking at me. We got some snow today. I don't know if you guys can see it. But finally, we got a winter wonderland in upstate New York. IE native, Claire Harris, how are you? Jason, what's going on? Troy, I know you have. I cannot believe it. I never thought this channel would even get to anything. You look good. What's your secret? No sleep. I probably got like 4 hours of sleep yesterday. Woke up, did my driveway and sidewalks, and then went down to my parents, did theirs. Then worked on the channel, worked on everything, getting ready for this. I've got 3 lot lizard stories for this evening. What's up, Jay? How are you? And look at this stash of experiences. Some good ones tonight. Some real good ones, I must say. Gina, how are you? Kathy Hayes, how are you? Stormin, Alaska. Wesley September. 50K Doctor. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. I know, Claire. I know it's crazy, right? It's crazy how fast it grows. I cannot wait until it's back to what it was. I was actually watching like an old video the other day, and I get when I had like this poof, and I was like, "Oh, what's up, Luke Neely? How are you?" Oh, you're good, Kathy. You didn't miss much except a couple really good lot lizard stories. Thanks, Janie. Nick Hendricks, how are you? Three Cat Mom, how are you? So, lot lizard stories. Tonight, I have got one about Betty the lot lizard. We have Betty the lot lizard. We have Steve the lot lizard. And oh, yeah, Taylor Shifty. Taylor Shifty the lot lizard. Taylor Shifty the truck stop terror. I did the Betty one because of Too Short's BJ Betty song. What's up, Sniff It Out? How are you? SDL, how are you? Jeff B, how are you? What movie, Jay? If it's anything about Dogman or werewolves, I probably won't like it, to be quite honest with you. Lot lizards bother me. Well, that sucks for you. What's up, Nicola? How are you? Anushka? Anushka. I don't know why they bother you. Lot lizards they shouldn't bother you, Danny, unless you're hiding stuff from us. Steve-O. Tyler 420. Poppy from Sweden. I'm Poppy. You ever seen Poppy? Not Poppy, but Poppy, the singer. She at first she came out looking like a robot, and then she's like a metal fucking girl. She's fucking creepy, but somewhat attractive. It's kind of creepy. ATD 12.4. ATD 124. Sorry. My fucking brain is shutting off. Cora Cortez, how are you? Kakalina, Justin, Shepherdess Beth, Juanita, how are you tonight? Christopher, San Francisco Bay Waste Operators, Motor Boat Champion, Raven, Sumner, how are you? Super cold. It is 0 here right now. It is 0. So you got me beat. But you're also like 200 miles northwest of me. So you've got that lake effect snow. Well, you got the Champlain Seaway effect. Thanks, SDL. What up, Robert Sharp? Amy Lane, how are you? Cocker. No, Coker. What's up, buddy? How are you? I hope you're doing well, Mr. George Coker. Lauren P., how are you? 5 rings. And Han Solo is with us. John Solo with us tonight. How are you? DB Mac is in the house. Christy Strom. Roberta. Adam Condon. Was everybody's week good? I hope everybody's week was good. Can I am. It matches my beard. The color matches too. No Cap Bussin'. What's going on? How are you, buddy? Ginger. Yeah, I don't read into things like that, though. about the 2 plane crash. Shit happens, you know? Like, to me, there's just, like, I know that cryptids exist 100% because I've seen a Dogman, but, you know, like, I don't know. I think when people read too far into things is when you're kind of like teetering on sanity and insanity. And it's already enough with like the paranormal and shit. Shit happens. Bad shit happens, you know. $2,600. Jeez, I hope your kitty is doing better. That's terrible. No way, Charles Whitmore. I am so glad it is finally freaking cold and snowy. I am like, oh, now I can use my snowshoes this week. Ed Bot, how are you? Thank you. Thank you for the support. I've been stacking silver. Me and my pops. I got Big Jim into getting the silver. Dis, how are you? Dis, Wiley. So tonight I have got literally like just a compilation of very crazy experiences. Ones that honestly I'm actually looking really forward to sharing with you. A lot of them are just completely terrifying. Well, let's just jump into it. I'm saving this one for Aramek though, because it is his favorite. Ducked up for life. What's up? How are you? All right. And they're a little longer tonight too. So some are like really long and some are not. A lot of them are, well, I'm really excited. So, and I hope you guys enjoy them too. No Bitcoin. Bitcoin is bad news. Crypto is bad news. Because what happens when shit drop? That movie mentioned Dogman that looked like hyenas. Jay, what was the movie? I missed it. Crypto is bad news. Like, I used to love crypto when it first came out, but I don't know. Then I realized, what if our computer systems all crash? Then all our money's gone. That's why you should collect silver and gold, because then if the world fucking crashes, you have something to trade of value. Well, currencies, silver and currencies. Currencies are useless without the backing of silver or gold. They have to have some sort of monetary value backing them. So, like, I love silver. I love collecting silver because right now it's cheap. It's not cheap, but it's cheap to get. And they expect silver to jump from like, I think it was like 30, 31.20 or something like that today, an ounce. But they expect it to jump to like 50 an ounce by the end of 2025. So, Gabrielle, Rampage Jackson. Holy shit. Rampage Jackson is in the house. What's up, Rampage? How are you? Yeah, it is going up. Since I first started collecting it, I remember when Gabrielle, Truth in Christ, how are you? Amber, Marty G, Michael Gregg, how are you? When I first started collecting Bucifus, how are you? Silver, I remember getting a gram for like, I think it was like $22 a gram or an ounce. I mean, $22 an ounce. I only like collect grams of gold. Like they come in these little blister packs of little bars. But yeah, silver is definitely the way to go. Have you heard of any? Yes, I have. Anushka. They're usually like a black dog. Could be like the Cadejo, and it might be a sign of um like you have a protection, like there's protection around you or something. I collect silver and dogs. I got LED that I can find here too. Wait, you must be like in Arizona or something, Danny Sanders. Arizona, maybe? Nevada. Okay. Hey, Monica. All right. Let's jump into some encounters. This one is very cool. Let me get myself situated real quick. I worked the night shift, and a coworker and I were both driving down a country road after work, probably at around 4:45 a.m. It was still dark outside. I saw his tail lights getting brighter like he was hitting the brakes. Then he swerved down into a ditch and came back out onto the road and kept going. As I approached the same area, I saw this very tall black figure walking in the road. It's moving in a very weird and unnatural gait, like it was kind of blowing in the wind, but it clearly was not. I first thought that it was just a really tall person wrapped in a big black blanket because I didn't see any arms or head, just two large legs and a torso. I had to swerve to avoid hitting it as well, but I basically came to a full stop, and the thing walked past my driver's side window. It had to have been around 7 feet tall, as it was leaning forward and was at least a foot or so taller than the top of my vehicle. As it got behind my vehicle, I could see the taillights illuminating its legs, but couldn't make out any details of hair or anything like clothing, just large, thick black legs. I took off down the road once it was behind me and saw that my coworker pulled into a gravel parking lot, so I pulled up beside him. He's freaking out, asking if I saw it and how it didn't have a head and other ramblings. I said we should go back and try to see what the hell this thing was because it seemed obvious or oblivious to us driving right at it. He didn't want to, but he ended up following me back. We drove back the way we came in, in around the same area. There was a very large black dog lying across the road. This was not your normal size canine. It was much larger than any normal dog, but it looked dead. It wasn't there when we drove through just 3 minutes earlier. Anyway, I decided I was going to get out and go and see if it was alive or not and move it to the side of the road because you really can't drive around it without going off to the edge of the road because of the way it was lying across the road. As I got out about 15 feet away, it rises its head up and looks back at me. Its eyes are glowing in yellow amberish color, but I still say that was due to the vehicle's lights causing the eye shine. It lets out this low, deep, rumbling, guttural growl, and I stop instantly. It attempts to stand up. Seems like it has some sort of issues with its front legs, but it does stand up and continues to stand on its two legs, just like a person. It only stood on its back legs for a second or two, enough time for me to look at it, but then it hunkers back down to what looks like on all fours and runs off into a wooded area. But there was a pretty tall fence, so I really don't know how it managed to disappear, because it would have had to gone over, under, or through, and it just vanished. I also don't think it was using its front legs when it ran off, because I never saw them really moving. Now, after this, there was one last strange thing that happened. My coworker gets out of his vehicle after the dog thing ran off, and he comes up to me basically saying, "What the fuck was that?" As we are talking, I notice a mouse standing between us. It was also standing on its hind legs, kind of sitting as if it was washing its face. I nudged it with my shoe, and it did not seem to care. Kind of like the first thing that was walking, it was kind of completely oblivious to our presence. It just kept on cleaning itself. We left and went our separate ways. I woke up later in the day and started looking into werewolves and came across Dogman stories. The only thing I will say about all of this is this didn't have the hands and feet like often claimed by witnesses. It did have normal dog paws. It just had large black wolf style look to itself, but its fur was very fluffy, which didn't really seem to match with the normal wolf type fur. It was not a bear, and it did not have mange. I know the difference between a bear or something like that. It just looked like a very large black dog. The first thing we saw, some people said, sounds like the Fresno Nightcrawler, but those have been white in appearance and not nearly as thick and as tall. Someone recently asked if maybe it had wings, and that was what it was concealing, as if they had been draped around in front of it. I never thought about that before, and I can't say one way or another, because I didn't see any sort of details of its body, just the blackness. The way it moved just seemed very odd, otherworldly. I always think about those inflatable tube men that flap around in the wind at the car dealers or some sort of event when I try to describe its movements. It was that weird. The mouse, that might be the oddest thing to me, because I physically touched it, so I know it was real, but it just didn't seem to care. It wasn't until recently, when I made connection that all three of these creatures were standing on their hind legs at one point, that they were connected. I never saw anything like this ever again, and I only live about 4 miles from where this all happened, and I drive through that area often. I wish I had more answers, but all I get is more questions. Fuck. Sorry. As someone who has been pretty skeptical most of my life, I've tried to explain it away in some logical manner, but I cannot. I have said the dog was playing with the mouse, must have gotten hit, and its front legs were hurt. That would explain why it was walking on its back legs and why the movement seemed unnatural. The mouse was traumatized from the dog messing with it. That explains why it looked all wet and was cleaning itself. That's the version I accepted for many years. The only problem with that is whatever was originally walking down the road was much larger than that dog. When the dog stood up, it was maybe 6 feet tall. But whatever walked by my window was at least 7 feet tall and leaning forward. The walking torso was also a lot thicker than the dog, as its legs were very thick. The dog's were normal. Coworker and I encountered a large black headless. Okay. Actually, Justin, I shared this encounter probably a year and a half ago on my channel. What's up, Aramic? I have Zilla. How are you? This one is for you, Aramic. Who did that? Who blessed me tonight? Kreger's 57. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. Thank you, Kreger's. I'm sorry I missed that. Shackleneck, how are you? Aramic, this one goes out to you, and it is a historical Mothman encounter. Brian Mons, how are you, buddy? Marcella Bennett. Bennett was the focus of often repeated Mothman incident on November 16th, 1966. This is frequently called the second sighting of the Mothman, with a Scarberry and Mallet sightings the night before being called the first. Thank you, Brian Mons. Even though today we know there were earlier encounters. On November 16th, 1966, rumors circulated that several armed local residents combed the area around a TNT plant for signs of the Mothman. Then at about 9 p.m. on November 1st, 1966, Raymond Walmsley, 19, and his wife Kathy, 18, and Marcella Bennett, 21, carrying her infant daughter Tina, sometimes written as Tina in the media, along with other family members, were finished visiting the Ralph Thomas family and returning to their vehicle. Mr. and Mrs. Ralph Thomas lived in a bungalow along the igloos, concrete dome-shaped dynamite storage structures erected in World War II near the TNT plant. The igloos were now empty, some owned by the county, others by companies intended to use them as storage. It was when the Walmsleys Bennett were leaving that they disturbed something on the Thomas property along White Church Road. A figure appeared behind their parked vehicle and reported, in some accounts, then went onto the Thomas's porch and roof. It rose up slowly from the ground, a large gray thing, bigger than a man, with terrible glowing red eyes, reported Marcella Bennett, who screamed and, panic-stricken, dropped her baby and fell to the ground in shock. The incident was famous for the fact that when Bennett saw it, she was so startled that she dropped her baby and fell on it. Bennett's remark about the Mothman, terrible glowing red eyes, is frequently quoted. As the thing unfurled its huge wings, Raymond Walmsley snatched up the child and herded the witnesses back into the safety of the house, where they were led in by Ricky Thompson, or Thomas 15, and sisters Connie and Vicky. When Walmsley went to the phone to phone the police, the creature seemed to have shuffled along behind the group, coming onto the porch and peering in at them through the window. The unknown creature vanished by the time the police arrived. Marcella Bennett was so traumatized that she eventually sought medical attention. They honestly shared their encounter with local authorities and news people as they wished to warn others. Location, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So a historical Mothman sighting for you, Aramic, to help your research in the Mothman. Yes, she fell on her baby. Can you imagine that? Like, you are a bad person. You are just a fucking asshole. You're like, oh! Like, why? Why not just hold the baby like a football and run? That's what I would do, you know? Jesus Christ. Marcella, you fucking bitch. Jason Voorhees, when you were in the woods in Telephone, I heard Simmet Uncle in the back of my house in Hinckley, New York. Where's Hinckley? Where is Hinckley, Jason? If you don't mind me asking. What's up, Chevy? How are you? Ford sucks. Randall Kennedy, how are you, buddy? It is funny, though. It is funny. Like, dropping it is one thing, but then she just, like, She had to outdo that and fall on the fucking thing. You know? Bounce. Oh, yes. Definitely shepherdess. What's up, Alan Howell? Mindy Meeks, how are you? Weeks, I mean. Lucas Williams, how are you, buddy? North of Utica. Okay. Randall Kennedy, thank you so much, my friend. If I hear metallic noises in the forest, I'm heading back to where I came from. Abso-freaking-lutely. Dude, if there's a glory hole in a female Dogman, I'm in. I'm in it to win it. I'm just kidding. Boondock Mojo, how are you? Tina Marie Anderson, how are you, dear? I don't know if I want to share the glory hole, Brian Mons. It's mine. It's mine. We're not Eiffel Tower and the fucking female Dogman. I'm sorry. Sean, definitely very smart. Very, very smart, my friend. Very, very smart. I guess it would be a dog woman, but, you know. We could always just knock them out first, though. All right. This one is a very, very long one. So we've had about 450 Max Lucas Williams before. Linda, how are you? It's not bestiality because it's a big or a dog woman. So it's not like it's a dog. It's a woman. Just add the dog to it. Dog, woman. I don't know. Maybe it's okay. Who knows? Call the cops. The beginning. My paranormal experiences started when I was roughly 6 years old. My first experience was very unexpected since at this point in my life, I didn't really know about paranormal or spirits. One evening, I was watching TV by myself in the living room while my parents were napping. Sure they were. As I was watching, I suddenly felt a chill on my back of my neck, followed by what felt like someone pushing a firm single finger straight down onto the top of my shoulder. As that happened, simultaneously, I heard someone whisper, "Hello," behind my right ear. At that, I sprinted into my parents' room, telling them I heard someone whisper into my ear that someone was in the house. They brushed me off and didn't check. To this day, I wonder if this event somehow opened me up years later. The closet encounter. After this incident, unexplainable things started to happen in my house. My stepdad likes to scare me from time to time and would hide in my closet before bed and poke at my feet to scare me. One night before bed, I checked my closet and closed it, knowing nobody was in there. Not long after I lied down, I could hear the door to my closet sliding open. When I looked at the dark crack in the closet, I saw red eyes staring back at me. I ran, flicked the lights on, and opened the door thinking my stepdad was there trying to scare me, but nobody was in there, and the eyes were gone as well. The eyes in the bathroom vent, another experience I would have frequent involved in the bathroom when I took baths. I would always see the same red eyes from the closet in the vent above the tub, just watching me. Pervert. It made me feel extremely uncomfortable, and I spent most of my bath time throwing a wet cloth at the vent. Usually, whenever I hit it dead on, the eyes would disappear. Until next time I had a bath, that is. First apparition. One night, my older brother and I were hanging out playing games. He asked me to go upstairs and grab him a cup of ice cubes. He liked to eat them. As I was walking up the staircase, I looked up toward the railing that overlooked the downstairs. Standing there, leaning onto a wooden railing, was a figure dressed in a long, heavy-looking hooded robe. Its face was shrouded in blackness, and I couldn't see any defining features. I don't know why, but I continued walking up the stairs. But I noticed that as I moved, the entity stopped leaning on the railing and began mimicking my movements in reverse. Every step I took, it would take one step backward toward the kitchen. When I reached the top of the stairs, the figure had made it to the doorway of our kitchen. Where it stood, it glanced in my direction and vanished right before my eyes. The second apparition. I saw this figure one more time while we lived on this property. I was upstairs on my computer playing World of Warcraft. Dork. Just kidding. Which had just recently been released. As I was playing, I started hearing crackling sounds, like someone crackling their knuckles. I thought I was alone in the house at this time, so it struck me as odd. I got up and opened the door to the hallway, leading to that same staircase and kitchen. When I opened the door, the figure was standing at the end of the hall. It wasn't looking at me, though. But I could hear the crackling sound. Realizing that it was coming from this entity, I slammed the door shut and locked it. 10 seconds later, after shutting the door, I heard strange sounds that I cannot describe. It was followed by what sounded like the door being pushed on hard as if a big gust of wind hit it. To this day, I have no idea who or what that was, why it was there, or if it was trying to connect with me. I also wonder if this entity may be the same one with the red eyes I had seen previously. Was it getting closer to me? The babysitter. This next part, I'm unsure about leaving in, but since I'm describing my weird upbringing, I might as well share. I'm not sure if this person contributed to the weirdness I experienced, but she definitely pushed my brother and me to seek answers on our own, as you will see here. My babysitter, who I'm going to omit her name, was someone who had connections to our family. Her sister worked on our farm and had her own horses stabled here, so my mom often came along. After a while, her mom often came along. After a while of her being around, she ended up just becoming our sitter. Not long after she started sitting for us, she told us that she was a witch. She showed us really old Polaroid photos of her and two other people performing some kind of ritual with symbols carved into a table. She also showed us things she could do, like moving objects around without being touched. For a long time, I thought this was just a fun story and tricks. But one day, I went inside from playing in the garage and made my way upstairs where she was preparing dinner. She was unaware I was nearby. I witnessed one of our knives on the counter slide 2 feet across straight into her hands, and she just continued cutting as if nothing abnormal had just happened. She never saw that I noticed that, and I never brought it up. But what that sparked in me was curiosity, and because of that, I started researching black magic. After looking around online with my brother, we stumbled onto some websites that gave directions on how to perform black magic rituals. So we attempted them ourselves. That's smart. We went outside, drew a pentagram with fallen leaves, placed a statue in the middle, and began to read off the ritual words we had written down. It was at this moment that our sitter looked outside, saw what we were doing, ran out, screaming at us at the top of her lungs. She started kicking the leaves everywhere and took the statue we had placed. She scolded us, saying we had no idea what we were playing with and to never do something like that again. Not long after, she stopped sitting for us, and sadly, she passed away not too long after that. While this part wasn't necessarily paranormal, I think the context is needed to understand how the upbringing was, and these events may have been creating a domino effect. One thing was for sure, my sitter had an interest in the occult. My last experience at this property was more tame, but still creepy. I was getting ready for school in the morning, and as I went to grab my hair comb, it just flicked off the counter and hit the wall behind me. I knew it didn't just fall. No. This brings us to the end of the first house before we move on to rural British Columbia near Lone Butte. I would like to note that these experiences so far are just the ones I can easily remember. They don't include noises I would hear, voices saying my name when nobody was home, shadows of people in my peripheral, and the feeling of being watched or sometimes touched. The move to Lone Butte. At this point in my life, we had packed up and moved about 5 hours north to the outskirts of Lone Butte, British Columbia. 20-minute drive from our place, the property we moved to sat on roughly 100 acres of woodland. We were in the middle of nowhere, and our closest neighbor were a good distance. Anyway, here are my main experiences at this house. I will not include everything, as there is just too many of footsteps, things moving by themselves around the house, people talking when alone, shadows of nobody being home. You get the point. The closet slamming, terrible timing. My first major experience at this house was my brother, who was very skeptical, and my stepsister. We were watching The Grudge at the time, and all of a sudden the upstairs closet started violently slamming and opening. For a while, this terrified all of us, and we didn't know what to do, so we just ran outside, waited for our parents to come back. I did end up going back inside to grab some shoes since the gravel was hurting my feet. When I did go inside, I poked my head around the corner towards the living room, just as the scene of The Grudge played, where a close-up of her eyeballs rolling back to the back of her head and staring at you. I always found the timing to be so perfect. It was comical, but at the time it scared me to death, and I did not want to go back inside at all. The schoolhouse in the woods. So, quick context about the property I was unaware of until I moved away later. The property we lived on in Lone Butte was 100 acres and was old native land. The property had 2 barns, one for horses and one for storage workshop, but it wasn't always just a barn or storage. It was used as an old school where a Catholic priest would bring native children and force them to learn their lessons about Christ. This place on the property was burnt down at one point, then rebuilt. It even had an old desk and chairs stacked up in the corner. There had been rumors I had heard about possible mass graves being tied to this place, and that these schoolhouses were not particularly kind toward the native children. Anyway, my experiences at that schoolhouse along with my brother is that we both saw faces of kids in the glass, and lights from the workshop would randomly turn on and off during the day or night. The woods at this property was spooky. We would find old leather belts tied up in trees, pickaxes, machetes, long and deep gouges ripped out of trees, and prints of large animals around the forest. We also found what we thought was a junkyard for old vintage cars. Some had been there for so long, trees were growing right through them. My Dogman experience. One night I was in our hot tub on the deck outside watching the woods, taking in the silence. It was winter time. We just recently had snowfall and left around knee-high deep snow. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. and out in the middle of nowhere. This very large wolf, bigger than one I had ever seen, came out of the woods. I remember its coat being a shimmering silver and its bright, piercing green eyes. As the wolf was walking along the fence of our paddock, it locked eyes with me, and we just kind of stared at each other as it walked by me, both alone in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. What happened next till this day instantly makes my spine shiver. As the wolf walked past me, walking towards our barn with our horses in it, it became darker as it entered the barn, but the other side of the barn still had a bright light illuminating the outside, and I could clearly see. This wolf, as it entered halfway through, it went from a shape of a wolf, a very large, broad-shouldered person. The horses didn't make a single sound, and this person now stood roughly 7 feet tall. Walking down the rest of the hall, it rounded the corner toward the open field, but didn't emerge from the other side. I never saw it again. My brother had his own encounter with this same creature, I'm guessing. He told me that he woke up randomly one night, the feeling of being watched. He then looked out his window to see a very large wolf-like creature walking away from his window. So I'm guessing it was watching him sleep. I'm going to end it here. I do have more paranormal experiences and some UFO sightings, but that's for another day. Thank you for allowing me to share. Sully, what's going on? Ruben Cruz, how are you? Sonny, the Wandering Gypsy, how are you? That was definitely a fucked up life that person had. You know, I remember, and I've shared this on the channel, I had two really weird things happen when I was a little kid at my first house that I remember my parents bought. It was right when we moved back to upstate New York after my dad had gotten out of the Navy. And I remember there was the door and something knocked back at me when I knocked. And then a day later, the door was open. But I had this closet and the house was weird how it was cut. But anyway, I opened the closet and I saw a set of eyes just like this person did. But my cousin, when I was opening the door and looking at these eyes, came up and pushed me in my fucking closet and shut the door. Nothing happened to me, thank God. But I just remember, like, as I got pushed in, they disappeared really quick. Beautiful day in Cali. Damn, 69 one time. Or maybe all the time. I don't know. There we go. What's up, Daryl? This is my brother Daryl. My brother Daryl. And I'm Larry. No, my cousin was way older than me, Arabic. I wish I did. The cocksucker used to hold me upside down. So we had these, like, you know, those grates in old houses that was like a circle. We had this furnace that was just huge. It was in the middle of our basement and it had arms that like intersected off of it. And so he would take the grate off of from the floor and he would hold me upside down. My head wouldn't fit in it, but I was only like 4. And he'd hold me above this hole and tell me he was gonna drop me in it. And I believed that I could fit in it for some reason. I was a dumb little kid. But no, he was a jerk to me. What's up, Lenny? Juno, how are you? I would cry. I didn't have siblings either. It was just me, R. It was just me. And so he was like, he would come periodically to my parents' house. And I think he came to my parents' house because my parents paid him to do work around the house. And he was a little scumbag. Like, that's mean to say. But no, he'd tell my parents he was going to paint the house and like paint half a wall and fucking get their money and leave. So my dad would have to finish it, painting it. And he never yelled at him either. Like he never yelled at my cousin. But if it was me that did it, I would have been like up shit creek. Get my email. I wanted to know. Zilla, I did not get your email. I did not. And I respond to him when I get it, my buddy. So nope. I apologize. Can you try to send it again? Oh yeah, he's still to this day a prick. And his son is Isabel's age, my daughter's age, and they are cousins. And he used to flirt with her. And I'd be like, dude, tell him to knock it off. And she's like, I punched him in his throat. It's okay, Daddy. I'm like, you're the best. I punched him in his throat. My dad is not scared of. My dad is definitely not scared of my cousin's dad. No, my dad was. My dad still is a badass to this day. I'm still afraid of the man. But do I love him? No, I don't love him. I know. She's like, right in the throat. I was like, belly button. Good girl. Gave her a big hug. He wasn't stationed to a boat, Aramic. He was in the Brownwater Navy, so he was on boats, like little kind of skiffs or crafts in the rivers of Vietnam. Actually, he might. I'll have to ask him. I don't know. I know that when I was little, he was in Sicily, and then when we moved to Bath, no, he was in Sicily. Then my mom moved to the base in Bermuda, where they hatched me. And then from there, we went to Bath, Maine. And then from there, we went here. And my dad was stationed here, but had to drive to like Whitehall or something like that. The Brownwater Navy, Colleen McDermott, is a division of the Navy that traveled in boats, like little speedboats that just wreaked havoc on every like villages and fucking they were pretty crazy. You put a bunch of fucking testosterone filled kids in a boat with big guns, what do you think's gonna happen? Bad shit. I know what a river monitor is. They're not the river monitors. They're a little bigger than what my dad was on. Mad Dog. I got to do it. Mad Dog, I love you. And I know that you asked me not to, but I got to give you props, bro. Mad Dog in the live stream tonight sent me this thermal imaging monocle. It can take photo and video. I am so appreciative of this. Like, you have no idea. It has this sick ass case. I can mount it to my tripod, my camera tripod. If I'm embarrassing you, Mad Dog, I apologize. I had to. I purposely brought it upstairs because I appreciate it, and I couldn't not thank you on the live tonight. So thank you very much. I appreciate this. Love you too, brother. Love you too. I literally have my backpack. It's got its own little home in there. So thank you so much. Southern Charmer, how are you? And with that, my friends and I saw one night, I am writing this, in late hours of November 30th. It happened early December 1st, 2024. We live in southern Arizona and are all staying the night at a friend's house for a birthday party. Her house is known among all of us as the haunted house, since we are always experiencing weird things there. But this time, right after the sun had set, we were sitting on her porch in the backyard when one of us yelled and pointed at the sun, or at the chest-high brick fence, saying that we had just seen a bald white man head poke itself over the fence. Two of us immediately ran over and looked over the fence and saw nothing. We laughed that off, but it was the first sighting of the night. We hung outside for a little longer until we decided to check over the fence again. And while we were doing so, we heard scuttling on the outside of the fence out of view. We joked about it and just went inside instead. A while later, we went outside again, and almost right away, someone saw a head pop up around another fence. Again, we all thought it was nothing, but more of us started seeing the head, hands, and part of its back. At that point, we were all scared as hell and started going back inside. One of the friends stayed back and scared the living shit out of us, but she was just standing and looking. We stayed there for a while. Now, with one friend holding a broom, they lost their broom privileges soon after. We kept seeing small things of white and some the same things before. The other friends previous inside came out again, scaring the shit out of us, and we all started talking about the things that we were seeing and what it could be. And eventually 2 people heard growling, and it was very clear they both were not faking. We all ran inside and started to panic, trying to reason in the fact that a skinny, bald creature was crawling around outside. We eventually found this, and thank goodness, because believe it or not, it made us feel much better. That is our experience, believe it or not. Arabic, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you. And 10 people appreciate that too. In the gut locker, recognize the pogo stick in the ham locker. Unfortunately, no, Cora. Unfortunately, no. I did reach out to the publishing company, and they gave me no response yet. So I'm gonna figure it out and do it again, probably. Shrooms, Jeff? No shrooms. Alan Howell, thank you so much. Yes. I go every year, my brother. What are those cloaking creatures? I don't know. People call them like the Glimmer Man. That's like the name in the crypto community, is like the Glimmer Man. I think it's kind of a stupid name if you ask me. This is Bat Country. Oh, a little bit of Avenged Sevenfold right there. That's what I'm going to do, Justin Jensen. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you, Nubian Emperor. There's invisible tech. Wonder if they're using... They have. I did an upload about holographic technology and warfares and stuff before Organic Machina. Andrea Dingbat, how are you? Zilla, love you all so much. Wanted to share that. Well, thank you, Zilla. We love you. And Moose McGrew, want you to come here for the weekend and visit the Amish territory. I gotta wait. Belle's almost going to be 18, and then I can start doing trips. Is it time? Oh my God, we've been on for an hour. And it is Lot Lizard time. Lot Lizard time. Oh, yeah. All right. I'm just going to start the night off with... Shit, I forgot to put this back in. All right. Let me take a big hit of my Juul. And we are starting the Lot Lizard experience with the Ballad of Taylor Shifty, the truck stop terror. We couldn't leave Lizzo. Lizzo needed a friend, and Taylor Swift is kind of like a Lot Lizard. She kind of looks like one. But Taylor Shifty is a whole different entity. The flickering neon sign of the Last Chance Oasis. Truck stop buzzed like a trapped hornet, a beacon of dubious hope in the vast, desolate landscape of I-40. It wasn't exactly a hive of thriving commerce. The place was more of a layover, a realm of limp coffee, questionable chili, and a lingering scent of diesel fumes and despair. It was also the home of the legend of Taylor Shifty. Taylor wasn't your average Lot Lizard. She was, how to put it delicately, a woman of ample proportions. Think human-sized beanbag chair, but mobile. And with the unsettling, cheerful demeanor, her laugh was a booming, wheezing thing like broken bellows. And her usual attire was stretchy leopard print top that threatened to burst at the seams and denim shorts that had seen better decades. But that was the only part of the picture. See, Taylor had a little something extra that the other working girls at the Oasis didn't possess. She was a shapeshifter. One moment, she'd be a hefty, friendly Taylor offering a discount on services with a wink. The next, she might be a lanky, unsettling, tall figure with eyes that glowed like embers in the dim light of the truck lot. And then there was the flying. Yes, flying. Not like a plane, not even like a bird. Taylor, in her more horrifying form, flew like a moth, the size of a small car. Her tattered dark clothing flapped like giant wings. The truckers, hardened men who had seen their share of strange roadside weirdness, whispered about her being some kind of Mothman hybrid. They called her Taylor Shifty. The name she seemed to enjoy almost as much as she enjoyed her unique interactions with them. The running gag around the Oasis was that nobody actually knew what Taylor did or even particularly wanted to find out. There was hushed rumors of truckers waking up with no memory of the night before, wallets mysteriously lighter, and strangely itchy skin that no amount of showering could soothe. One unfortunate night, a young, fresh-faced driver named Bobby, barely out of training, rolled into the Oasis. He was new to the long haul, overly confident, and completely oblivious to the local folklore. And when he saw Taylor leaning against his rig and offering a smile that could melt asphalt, Cora, thank you so much, he thought. he had hit the jackpot. Well, hey there, Bobby chirped. His voice. Sorry. Well, hey there, Bobby chirped, his voice still carrying a hint of boyish enthusiasm. You look like you could show a fella a good time. Taylor's boom of a laugh startled the flock of pigeons nesting in the eaves. Oh, I can show you more than a good time, honey. She wheezed, her eyes twinkling with something Bobby couldn't quite decipher. Maybe it was amusement. Kitty Wolfus, thank you. Maybe it was something else entirely. Bobby, in his naive ignorance, agreed to Taylor's offer. A bit of giddy for his own good. They went into the dimly lit back office of the Oasis convenience store, which conveniently was closed for the night. What followed was a blur of panicked yelps and sounds of shuffling furniture and Taylor's guttural laugh punctuating the air. Later, Bobby stumbled out of the back room, looking like he had seen the face of God. It wasn't a kindly one. His hair was standing on end, his eyes were wide with terror, and he was uttering a string of incoherent sentences, including phrases like giant moth, sticky, and where'd my eyebrows go? He never spoke of the specifics. Goddamn S's. He never spoke of the specifics. Nobody asked. They knew. The other truckers, hardened by years on the road, just shook their head and offered Bobby a stiff drink of whatever concoction they kept in their thermoses. Happens to the best of us, kid, said Mac, a grizzled veteran who had seen more than his fair share of road oddities. Just consider it a learning experience. From that night on, Bobby's deliveries slowed down. His trips became erratic. He still drove, but with a newfound fear that caused him to check every shadow and every overpass for a pair of glowing red eyes. The legend of Taylor Shifty grew. Truckers, now armed with the knowledge of her true terrifying nature, started avoiding the Oasis altogether. They'd rather drive the extra miles than risk a close encounter with the hulking moth-like terror who haunted this desolate parking lot. The Oasis eventually became eerily silent. The neon sign continued to buzz, a defiant testament to a place that wouldn't die. And Taylor Shifty? Well, some say she's still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for another naive soul to roll up to her lonely trap. Others swear they have seen her silhouette against the moon, flapping like a monstrous winged nightmare, always on the prowl. The moral of the story, if there is one, is that sometimes the most terrifying things on the road aren't the empty stretches of highway or the late night fatigue. Sometimes they are the things that come disguised in leopard print with a booming laugh, ready to give you an experience you will never forget and desperately wish you could. So, if you ever see a place called the Last Chance Oasis on your map, do yourself a favor. Keep driving. Just keep driving. Taylor fucking Shifty. What's up, I Run With Scissors? How are you? Just keep driving. Thank you, Randall Kennedy. Aramic, thank you. I included your favorite cryptid in that. When I was writing that last night, I was like, all right, this has got to be good. Where are my eyebrows? The horn blows. Horn blows. That's the driver. 20 bucks. is $20. Jersey Nightcat. Thank you so much. Moose McGrew. I don't have neighbors. I live in my house is, well, there's an antique store next to me with an apartment. My building was a dentist office at one time. And when the dentist died, I took over the building. Excuse me. Over there is a Cumberland Farms, which is like a truck stop for crackheads. The cop is parked down there. The neighbors that live above the antique store are fucking idiots, so I don't really care about them. Fuck them. Good night, Robert. Don't let your meatloaf. No, I have not seen Bigfoot. I just saw the Dogman. Thank you, Tina. Want a roommate? No, I got one, and her name's Isabel, and she is worse than my ex-wife was. She thinks everything that's mine is fucking hers, and she's only 17. We'll do a little song after this one, though. Do a little song? Okay. My grandmother died almost 17 years ago, and I was recently talking to my mom about some stories she had told me. And there was one story in particular that had slipped my mind until she reminded me about it. This happened in Manchester, England, around 1953, a few hours after my grandma had just given birth to my uncle, which was a home birth. During the night, my Nana was lying in bed trying to sleep with my newborn uncle, but had struggled to drift off due to the baby fussing. She told me that she was lying on her back with my uncle on her chest, and the room was pretty much pitch black aside for the streetlights coming in through the net curtains. She tried to drift off, but then started to feel a little uneasy as though she was being watched. That sort of feeling that makes your skin prickle and the hair stand on end. The next minute, she heard a whistling coming from the side of her bed, so she looked at her right and said she saw a really thin man in a suit and a top hat grinning at her from the floor below. She said he seemed full of mischief and almost seemed to be mocking her and the baby by pointing at them and making a hand on the stomach and laughing motion. He then kind of danced around, tipping his hat and jumping from one foot to another, still laughing and pointing. And he jumped on the bed and came even closer to them and did the same motions. She remembered feeling a sense of dread as though it was trying to get across the thought she wouldn't have the baby for very long, or that it knew something she didn't. She was terrified and closed her eyes, thinking it was some sort of hallucination due to exhaustion, and ended up falling asleep. My Uncle John sadly died via brain aneurysm after being beat with a baseball bat by car thieves in 1980. And she is adamant the being knew his fate and was rubbing it in. She didn't feel it was a warning, but a celebration almost. She said she constantly thought back to that little man that gave her the creeps. She had quite a lot of paranormal experiences in general, but unfortunately, I've forgotten most of them. It made my hair stand on end when she told me this for some reason. She said it was dancing like and resembled a little man from Twin Peaks, but obviously much smaller. Anyway, I believe it could have been a leprechaun or some kind of troll or fairy. Top of the morning to ya. Trying to think of a song. tiger. Eye of the tiger. Eye of the tiger tonight. No, I've not seen ads for an animated movie called The Dogman. Oh, it's a commercial. It's like a cartoon. Yes, Eye of the Tiger, Aramic. Din, 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 din. Rising up, back on the top. This is a very strange experience of how I came to see the Dogman on the night of August 1st, 2022, at around midnight. I lived in a neighborhood by the way of Newport, Oregon, but we were on the edge of a large forest behind our house, so not completely rural. Funny part of the story. So I set up a live trap for a mouse last night, catch and release. I can't stand to harm the mice. It triggered at midnight and a large pop of the door woke me up. I decided I didn't want to just leave it in the cage all night long, waiting for morning. I could hear it trying to chew through the wire and didn't want him to torture himself or get hurt attempting to get out. So I decided I would just take him outside immediately. Instead of releasing the mouse in my yard of my house, I always go about 3 miles to the forested area. I'm not cruel enough to just release him by somebody else's house, thus causing them a mouse problem. Irrelevant info, I know. Anyway, I got into my car to transport the little mouse. My stomach began hurting like never before. It was a horrible, foreboding feeling that was almost telling me something terrible was going to happen. There was no reason for my stomach to just suddenly start screaming out in pain. I essentially never had stomach problems like this. You needed to take a shit, buddy. It's exceedingly rare. It just didn't get stomach aches. But this was painful on the scale that it was strange. I kept telling myself this deep sense of something being wrong. I get into the car with the little cage going down the street. It was literally only 1 block away from my home that I instantly slowed on the brakes because something enormous at the side of the road. At first, I thought it was the tallest dog I had ever seen. Its silhouette was blacker than the night. As I slowed the car from maybe 20 to 10, it suddenly came into the streetlight and walked across the street in front of my car. It was not running, but it wasn't going slow either. I suddenly realized that this was no ordinary dog, but I knew it was not a bear either because it didn't have much of a belly. This was 3 or 4 times the size of a wolf, and so I can confirm that it was not a wolf. What I saw looked like a humanoid literally hunched over on all fours, back erect in a hunch, moving in the pace across the road. The head was distinctly wolf-like and enormous. It literally looked like a giant wolf's head. The being had jet black hair, as black as hair can get. The legs were lanky. My brain literally froze instantly. I began rationalizing, but it was fairly impossible to rationalize what I had seen. Closest thing I can comprehend this would be a werewolf from Harry Potter, Professor Lupin. All I can think is, how did they know that's nearly identical to what I was thinking? It's horrible. It was literally quite accurate to looking like CGI. On all fours, its backside is probably 4.5 feet in height. Its head higher, easily 5.5 feet. Again, there was no way this was a bear or a regular beast we are familiar with as humans. There was nothing familiar about this. To anyone who may say maybe it was just a real large dog that was sick and hunched over, definitely not. It was bigger than the largest dog breeds I have ever seen. To be over 4 feet high at the back, not the head, while hunched over, that's definitely not a regular dog. Impossible to be a bear, as none are this skinny. The humanoid aspect of it could not be denied. You could tell that if it wanted to, it could have easily stood on its hind legs. What's more insane is that I could feel its energy. The energy was dark, oppressive, and really just had the sense of danger sweep over me. It had very otherworldly energy about it. I slowly continued driving and quickly started over to the left side of the road as I was passing to see where it had gone. I was able to see its silhouette in the brush, looking back at me, watching me pass, and I did not stop. I was scared. I went on to my mission to release the little mouse, but I can tell you this. When I did get home, I ran into my garage, shutting the door as quick as possible. I was panicked and truly terrified. When you know what you saw, you know what you saw, they always say. I also know my mind didn't just fill in blanks. This was not a hallucination. Anyway, I had looked up Dogman accounts only to find other people's descriptions and drawings were pretty identical to what I saw. What are the odds? I am now convinced that it was real. I never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever see something like this. Pops, how are you? Recently freed 6 mice. Ooh, Tillamook ice cream does rock, Janie. It is good smack. Good smack. Pine nut, you're good. Do better next time. I am trashing the Cokes. Oh, yeah. And I got the old Kershaw. And it's got the bottle opener. And the bottle cap went in the garbage. Mexicano Coca-Cola. Arriba. I had a little Tito Santana vibe to it. Little Tito Santana. Rising up, back on the top. Someone said Dogman wasn't real, Zilla? Rocky 3? That's with Drago. If he dies, he dies. Fucking love Drago. Tiggy ain't coming. Not tonight. Not with the old freaking Hebrew horn out. For whom the dong tolls. Oh. You guys ever heard of a group called Electric Six? Tina Marie, I don't know if you've ever seen the videos that I've done in my house, but my house is quite haunted. I've caught in like stick figures on my SLS cam, a bunch of crazy shit here. Yes, it's very bad. Electric Six has a song called The Gay Bar. And I played that song for my dad today. And my dad fucking almost fell out of his chair laughing so hard. He was like, "What the fuck is this, Jeffrey?" And he's like, "This is the funniest song I've ever heard." Yeah, it's fucking great. I can't play it because I might get hit with a copyright strike. At the gay bar. Gay bar. Yes, I'm wearing shorts, Janie. I want to spend your money at the gay bar. Gay bar. Fuck it. Where's my phone? Okay, here we go. Because $20 is $20. Yes, the song is old as hell, James. I saw these guys. I saw them play with the White Stripes in 2010, actually. The video is the funniest shit ever. They have Abe Lincoln dancing in thongs and not just regular thongs. Zilla, thank you. But then right after this, my dad goes, so I played him that after I got done snow blowing the driveway, right? And so I'm just hanging out with Big Jim and I play him that. And he goes, play that song with the banana mobile. And I'm like, Bloodhound Gang, Dad? And he goes, yeah, play them for me. And he only likes the Bloodhound Gang because there's hot girls in the videos. And I'm like, okay. Thank you, Randall Kennedy. Thank you, Zilla. Striper is almost as bad as fucking Winger. Kip Wanger. Just do it. This experience is pretty fucking great. Wanger. Thanks, Randall Kennedy. No, the channel song is this. This is the channel song right here. I gotta find it. Donkey. I'm a swamp donkey.
In our last story, we touched on a horrible.
Thank you, James Dark Waters, for providing Swamp Donkey. That song that I just played is Dark Waters' mockumentary about, it was when him and Swamp Dweller were feuding, and he wrote this fucking spoof about Swamp Dweller and called him Swamp Donkey. And it's probably the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It is awesome. It is pure joy. Pure joy. Not that I have anything against Swamp Dweller at all. I don't. I really don't. I actually have no issue with him. I like him. I think he's a nice kid. But him and James feuded, and then James created that song. And goddamn, it's great. Oh, fuck. What's up, Kaufman? This takes place in Cocoa Beach, Florida, May of 2021. Before I begin, I must admit that I was under the influence of 3.5 grams of mushrooms. Nubian Empire or Emperor. Were you hanging out with this guy? 3.5 grams of mushrooms when this occurred. I believe this encounter only happened of the fact, not as an effect of. Edit. It seems that I wrongly assume most people would understand that this is a low dose, or at least be knowledgeable that mushrooms remove a veil of reality and allow you to see what is hidden. At this threshold, there is no hallucinations, just like visual distortions, like brighter colors, surfaces seeming to breathe, enhanced moods, and a deeper connection to your spiritual self. If you have any real experience, it is easy to distinguish drug-induced effects versus reality. After an hour or two of gazing toward the sunset, watching the waves come and go, and pondering about my life, it is now dark. I became fixated on the stars. As you might know, they sort of connect the dots. Richard, thank you! In a way, after eating the magic fungi. But at this point, those visuals had passed, and I began to notice a light. The kind you see off in the distance, plane moving too fast or too high in the altitude to seem to be. It also had the common characteristic of a UFO, where it buzzed around like a bee rather than smoothly gliding through the air. At first, I assumed it may be a high-tech drone, as I knew there was a launch station very close by. But very quickly, that assumption faded, as it seemed to buzz around in no clear direction directly above me. I can't fully describe the feeling, but somehow it knew I was watching. Once I gave it my full attention, it flew toward the ocean, where I had to sit up and stare above the water to continue watching. I remember the moon being at least half full, and it was bright enough that I could clearly see the clouds and see anyone on the beach that passed by, even though I was alone at the time. I watched what I can only describe as a distant star-like light, only slightly bigger than the brightest star in the sky, again buzzing around quickly, directionlessly. But now it seemed to be showing off more and flying erratically. It would go in one direction super fast, make a dead stop. I also noticed the clouds reacting to its flight and shifting and twisting within its movements in a DNA sort of shape. This could have been the mushrooms, but I am not sure. This was 2 hour plus since the peak. Now, this is where things got weird. This is the point of the experience where my reality started to crack. The light was on the left side of the sky, and out of nowhere, it shot across the sky horizontally to the right, and about 10 times the speed it was moving before. As it reached this small patch of clouds, I watch it teleport 100 yards directly to its left, then the same distance to its right, about 8 or 10 times as it's moving in the same direction. It does this in succession in a way that it looked like it had been jumping from point to point, not flying. Again, it makes a dead stop directly after this. At this point, my jaw dropped. For the first time in my life, I was thinking, did I just really see that? And guess what? For good measure, it does the same thing again, as if it heard me. It flies back to the left side of the sky, shoots across, teleports again. Now I'm on my feet as my reality is breaking before my eyes, and I'm trying to make sense of what is happening. A man leaving the beach starts coming near me, and I think perfectly, maybe someone else is seeing what I'm seeing. I get his attention, which he seems extremely annoyed by, and I immediately say, "Are you seeing that shit flying around up there?" His response, "Yeah, cool, huh?" And walks off the beach, not even looking up from the ground as he says this. Okay, great. So I'm crazy, and now I look crazy to this random dad, is what I thought to myself. I am not certain what happened to the light after this, as I am pretty dumbfounded, and my mind is just in the WTF mode. I think it just took off into space shortly after the interaction with the man. Now begins my humanoid part of the encounter. Sorry for a long UFO recount, but I believe the details to be important in case someone else can relate. I don't see anyone else nearby that could have seen the light, so I start walking toward the water. On the beach, there is a ridge about 20 feet from the shoreline, and there is a gradual descent to the water about 5 feet. I am standing at the top of this ridge when I notice two figures coming from the left. They are directly in front of the shoreline, and at first, I thought it was just two people jogging next to each other. But as I am focusing my eyes on them, I can't seem to make out any body parts moving or definitive features. I don't see my arms or legs moving. I don't see my hair bouncing. I don't see sand being kicked up, nothing. I can make out the outlines of torsos, maybe legs, but I am seeing right through them into the ocean, as if they are like in predator camo. They were the same size, shorter than the average human, moving in synchronicity with each other and seeming more like they were floating rather than walking, though they were moving at a jogging pace. I still thought that maybe it was just my eyes, but it wasn't that dark. You know how it is on the beach. You start to walk closer as someone passes in front of you, slowly in case they are just joggers, as I didn't want to freak them out. Approaching them in the dark. But when I take a few steps forward, they both pick up speed and go past me. Again, no perceivable movements or sounds. They just zoom away down to the shoreline. Looking back, it was interesting that I saw these entities immediately after seeing the light. I still even consider the possibility of it being military tech and the figures being cloaked humanoid or humans, seeing who saw the test light. But the fact that I was on mushrooms and felt a mental connection between us makes me think that it was spiritual or alien. I swear I felt like it was communicating, like, hey, watch this, before blowing my mind with teleportation. I also felt a presence or just pure fear after seeing these figures, enough to immediately leave my car. Please let me know if anyone has ever experienced anything like this. Hang on, I'm getting hot. Ugh. 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 In the ham locker. Larry Lindman, what's up, buddy? No, I have to disagree with you, Aramek. Just because he was mushroomed up, I don't think that he was past his peak. So, because I've seen some crazy shit when I was younger, and me and my friends did a bunch of mescaline, and I've seen some weird shit, and I believe that it does lift the veil. Like, there's some veil, you know what I mean? And I don't know, because me and my friends were running through the woods one day, and we were freaking, like, I don't know, it was crazy. But myself and my friend Eugene, who I was running through the woods with, both saw the same thing. Lindman, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you. So, I don't know. But, you know, it can be, maybe he did perceive, you know what I mean? But I can say that what me and my friend saw, because we both saw it. Like, I stopped him and I was like, dude, are you seeing like something over in the woods running with us? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, explain what you seen. And he's like, kind of like a monster. And I'm like, yup. And then we just ran out into a field. We got the fuck out. Well, that's way better than what I saw, SDL. Shit. It was kind of like a hairy. It wasn't like Bigfoot or Dogman. It was like, it honestly looked kind of like a goat man without horns. That's the best way I can describe it. Big holes in the ground and bats. Oh. Yes, I do, SDL. Quite a bit. I did one last night, actually. Foxtrot, Kilo. I'm not a Dogman channel. All Dogman. Even though it's like in my title. What the fuck? All right. Myself and 4 of my friends were in the Russian countryside this winter. We stayed at one of my friends' houses from mid-December to the beginning of January, about 20 kilometers east of Moscow. One night before New Year's, we had a terrifying encounter with something horrible. It was 1:30 in the morning, and we had stayed at the house all day, ate pizza, watched movies, and played Mortal Kombat. We had also been to a sauna that had been in good spirits, as the later that day, it would be New Year's. We were outside of my friend's house, which overlooks a very small valley, about 10 meters in depth and 60 meters in length. And we were blowing up some fireworks that we had prepared. His house is quite isolated, with the nearest neighbor being 100 meters away. We blew them up one by throwing them into the valley that was next to the house. As we are doing this, I was the first to notice a black silhouette with a glowing orb in the distance moving towards us really fast. I immediately notified everyone with me and told them to get inside. My friend saw the figure. We were confused as to whom it may be, what they were doing, but weren't worried, as the figure was a very long way away, and we had at least 2 minutes before it had came close enough to the property to see our faces or do anything. I look back at the figure and immediately notice that its eyes are faintly glowing, nothing crazy or bright, just very faintly a yellowish gold color, similar to the way a cat's eyes reflect light in darkness. I also noticed that the figure had traveled a very large distance in 5 seconds. I took to turn around and inform my friends. This was especially worrying as it was walking, not running. I immediately knew it was time to leave. I ran toward the gate to the house and yelled for my friends to follow me, which after witnessing what I had witnessed, they obliged, except one of them. One of our friends looked frozen in fear. His eyes were wide open, his mouth slightly agape, and he was not blinking. The entire time he was looking at this creature, his mouth was open, and I ran and pushed him in order to get him to move, which made him snap out of it in some sort of light trance he was in. By this point, the figure was only about 100 meters away, and nearly at the same time, all of us were filled with a visceral feeling of dread, not fear, but more like whatever is happening right now is very, very wrong. We later realized that this was probably emanated from this creature. As we were entering the garden and ducking behind the fence, we noticed that the creature was moving at a minimum of 5 times faster than a regular person could run, while making absolutely no noise, even though it was walking. We hid behind this fence for ages and managed to get a picture of him in front of the fence. As this creature walked to the nearby woods, leaving behind absolutely no footprints and making no noise at all, we still have no clue of what this was. Update. I forgot to add that one of my friends said that this creature apparently turned into smoke at one point, like white smoke, and then materialized again. Not sure if I believe him, as nobody else saw this. Ooh la la. Where is that? Ah, here we go. So someone asked earlier tonight about the glimmermen, the predator-like creatures. Well, man to mist, vampire could have been. The Rougarou supposedly turns into a black mist, and that's if you look it up and do some research into like the Rougarou and some of the legends of it. It's not a dogman. It's definitely a shapeshifter that transforms into a dog-like creature, an alligator-like creature, a feline-like creature, all bipedal, and like a smoke-colored. 100%, Sean. 100%. I believe they are interdimensional. Not all, but a lot of them, 100%. Yeah, Rockin' Steady isn't here either. Sabrina Johnson, how are you? All right, here we go. When I was approximately 7 years old, which would have been around 1974, we were living in a mobile home park in Mission, Texas. We had just moved to this mobile home park as my parents had sold the property we lived on. The park was huge, probably 20 to 40 acres, and it had just opened. There were only 2 or 3 other homes in the whole park, spaced far apart. The park was surrounded by orange groves, so it was relatively isolated. I believe it was called Tradewinds Mobile Home Park. I don't know if it is still there, as I haven't been back to Mission since 1991. One morning, early before sunrise, I woke up to a noise outside of my bedroom window. I don't recall clearly what the noise was, but it was enough to rouse my curiosity. I figured it was probably coyote and was quite curious to catch a glimpse. I had to stand on my bed to look out my window. I was scanning the yard below, but did not see any coyote. I then noticed a motion to my left and turned to see a figure standing next to my mom's car. It was an outline of a large being. It had to be huge as it was several feet taller than the car. I would guess 6.5 to 7 feet in height. The figure was large, bulky, the shoulders very wide, the legs thick, but all clearly humanoid shape. The inside of the outline was quite dark, shimmering like light couldn't escape, best way I can describe it. But the outline was clearly visible. It turned toward me, and we just stood there looking at each other for several seconds. I don't know how I knew it could see me, but it did, and I did. At this point, I did not feel any fear. I just felt stunned, trying to understand what I was looking at. It then slowly turned and walked off into the darkness. At that point, I jumped from my bed and ran to my parents' room. I woke my mom up, trying to tell her what I had seen, but she insisted it was just a bad dream. I knew it was not. She got up and continued to get ready for work. She tried to laugh it off, but I kept insisting, and she didn't want that I did not want her to go outside because this big, invisible like creature would get her. At that point, she didn't want to hear any more. I think I was somewhat in shock and traumatized by what I had just seen. However, several days later, there was an article in our local paper, The Monitor, about a local woman who had seen the exact same thing I saw, only she reported it to the police. As I recall, the article made the woman out to be a crazy lunatic. My mom read the article to me, and we both just sat there stunned. She then questioned me about it again and told me not to tell anyone. I suppose she didn't want to expose me to ridicule. To this day, she refuses to talk about the ordeal. What is even scarier is that sometime after this incident, I began to recall more and more of the events that happened before. I heard noises outside. I remember lying in bed, unable to move. This was shining a light in my eyes and telling me that they had to go shortly. No words were exchanged. I remember feeling like I was wrapped in a thick jello. I could see another being in my room looking through my dresser drawers. For what? I have no idea. The being was shining its flashlight looking device into my drawers, only to light greenish was coming out of them and going into my dresser drawers. But light moved when the being moved the flashlight. I remember starting to panic and then all of a sudden feeling calm. The first being again told me without words that they would be done soon and that I would not remember a thing. Next thing I remember is waking up to stand up on my bed and look out the window. I have no idea what they were looking at or why. Perhaps I had found something they wanted back. I don't know, and probably never will. I've never shared this with anyone other than my mother. I have not told my partner of 18 years about this. Yep. It's time. It's time. The story of Steve the Lot Lizard. The flickering neon sign of the Big Rig Oasis was Steve's personal lighthouse, guiding weary travelers and their even weary wallets into his particular orbit. Steve was not your typical lot lizard. For one, he was a Steve, not a Susie, and for another, he had the uncanny ability to shift his appearance. 1 minute, he was a cherub-like twink with a dimpled smile, and next, a rugged lumberjack sporting a handlebar mustache. And then, suddenly, a leather-clad biker with a piercing gaze designed to make your radiator hiss. This, along with his odd dietary preference, was what made Steve unique. He wasn't exactly proud about the dingleberry thing. It was a quirk, an acquired taste that had developed. He suspected after too many late nights under the harsh sodium glow of the truck stop parking lot. He told himself they tasted like licorice. But mostly, he just didn't think about it. It was better that way. Steve's days, or rather nights, were a peculiar blend of mundane and the bizarre. He'd flirt with the burly truckers, swapping stories and spit about the lonely roads. He knew their secret desires, their arcing backs, and their need for a bit of human connection. It wasn't always a glamorous life, but Steve had his own charm, a blend of naive optimism and a hint of something otherworldly. He craved love, of course, buried deep beneath the carefully crafted facade of a sex worker. There was a heart that yearned. He longed for someone to look past the shape-shifting and the dingleberry habit and see the real Steve. The Steve who, despite everything, believed in genuine connection and a good spanking, of course. The spankings were, after all, a vital part of a routine and not something he was ashamed to crave. One sweltering July night, a rig pulled in to the stop. A driver, a silver-haired fella named Earl, lumbered out, his face obscured by a baseball cap and a scowl that could curdle milk. Steve, sensing an opportunity, shifted into a more mature form. He became a salt-of-the-earth type with a kind face and calloused hands that looked like they had spent a lot of time on the farm. "Evening, friend," Steve, as Farmer Steve said, his voice a low rumble. "You look like you could use a good meal and maybe some company." Earl grunted, his eyes narrowed as he took Steve in. "You ain't one of those fancy boys, are you?" "Just a simple soul looking for some simple pleasures," Steve replied with a wink. They ended up sharing lukewarm coffee at the Greasy Spoon Diner, Earl complaining about the price of diesel, and Steve listening with surprising empathy. As Earl talked, Steve felt a strange pull, a genuine connection he had not experienced before. It wasn't just the prospect of the spanking. There was something else there, something real. Later, back in the cab of Earl's truck, the mood shifted. Earl, after a few beers, became more open. He confessed about his wife leaving him, his lonely nights on the road, and his yearning for someone to share the pain. Steve, in that moment, decided to drop the act. He shifted back into his more natural, slightly elfin form, hair tousled and eyes wide. "Earl," he said softly, "I'm not exactly who you think I am." Earl blinked, his face a mask of confusion. "What are you, some kind of magician?" Steve chuckled, a soft twinkling sound. "Something like that. And I also really like spankings, if you're into that sort of thing." Earl's face, which had the mix of befuddlement and a touch of fear, morphed into something else entirely. He looked intrigued. "And you eat what now?" Earl asked, his voice a low growl. Dingleberries, Steve answered honestly, but it's not a big deal. The night took a turn, then a weird dance between genuine human connection and a healthy dose of bizarre. There was talk, shared stories, a surprising tender moment, and yes, a few well-deserved spankings that left Steve feeling a strange combination of satisfied and raw. The next morning, as the sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky a hue of pink and orange, Earl looked at Steve with a newfound respect. You're a strange one, Steve, he said, scratching his head, but you're all right. Steve beamed. His heart swelled. Maybe, just maybe, he had found something more than a fleeting encounter. Maybe love, or at least a solid, semi-regular client with the fondness for spanking, wasn't so far away after all. As Earl pulled his rig out onto the lot and drove off, Steve stood watching him. He felt a pang in his chest, a mix of hope and fear. Then he looked down at the gravel, spotting a particularly fine specimen of dried stuff, and shrugged. He was Steve the lot lizard, after all. He had to stay grounded, even if he sometimes ate things that no one else did, and occasionally shifted into a leather-clad biker with a piercing gaze. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would bring another chance at love, and of course, more spankings. Life was, after all, a long and winding road, and Steve was just trying to navigate it, one dingleberry and spank at a time. Poor Steve. Night, George. Poor Steve and his dingleberry habit. My in-laws told me this experience, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't believe in this type of thing, but they are simply not the kind of people to make this sort of stuff up. Apart from being Christians, they are not superstitious. They rarely share this experience because they know it sounds nuts. I thought it could be interesting to hear what you guys think of it. My parents-in-law did a pilgrim walk from Oslo to Trondheim in Norway for their honeymoon many years ago in the late 90s. It's quite a long hike over several days through the forest and valleys. They had a rest in the forest and were sitting down when a very small man, less than half a meter tall, came walking by. Nobody said a thing. My in-laws just stared and couldn't believe their eyes. They described him as having a good aura and slightly smiled at them and walked into the forest. He wore gray, plain clothes. And that's it, really. He's described as being small, too small to be a human. And they believe him to be a niece, a type of small folk or gnome that is part of old Norwegian folklore. It's the first time I've ever heard a first-hand account of someone who genuinely believes they've encountered a mythical creature. Arabic. Thank you, Arabic. I appreciate you, brother. Damn. Maybe, you know what? I am going to, in involve Chuck Norris in a lot lizard encounter next week. Tigger is doing good. He's probably lying on my bed because he's just that kind of guy. All right. The time was December 23rd, 1978 at 1 a.m. I remember the date clearly as I was 10 years old and Christmas was 2 days away. I always tell this experience the same as it is burnt into my brain like it was yesterday. We lived on a mesa in Safford, Arizona. A mesa is a raised plane of earth above the surrounding resembling a table. There are 4 other families that lived on the mesa. Our farm was a 40-acre piece of land with our nearest neighbors being a quarter mile away. I awoke, to a lack of a better term, pulled to my bedroom window, which faced the Graham Mountains, which during the day I could see the road that went to the top. There were no homes or buildings anywhere in that direction, at least not in 1978. And what I saw about 200 yards away was a classic silver UFO, and with 2 halves that separated the craft, a bar of pulling lights that went clockwise in direction, and a ramp coming from the opening. At the bottom of the ramp were 3 alien-like creatures whom I could see clearly, unclothed, gray, with very large eyes, very spindly arms, short, but upon seeing them at this distance, I heard them inside my brain. And upon hearing them talk to each other in an incomprehensible language, I realized I wasn't able to move any part of my body. And this caused my heart to race. And I guessed one of them noticed and to calm me down, informed me I was being given a gift and not to worry. I would be thankful for it. It was like my brain was a filing cabinet and they were rifling through it. I've always had the feeling that they either left something or modified something, as after going to sleep, which I don't remember how that took place the following days, had amazing things take place. But I'll get into that later. I awoke that morning and went to a friend's house a quarter of a mile away and told him about my experience. And he said, "Let's go to where you saw this thing." We got there, and where it had been was a brand new green plant and otherwise lifeless or occasional brush randomly strewn. This was solid bright green circle, the size of the craft I had seen. The next night was the night before Christmas, and after falling asleep, I woke floating out of my body in a lotus position, the kind that yogis do. I looked down at my sleeping body. I was on autopilot, just along for the ride, and this included going through my closed bedroom door. Didn't feel like anything you might expect. Saw everything that was under the tree, but unwrapped still, like a Stretch Armstrong or Rock'em Sock'em Robots went back, floating 3 feet above the ground through the closed door. Since that happened, I know that it occurred, but I still believe the gift I was supposedly given isn't really a gift. On occasion, for no particular reason, words will come out of my mouth about something in the very near future that will happen. On so many occasions, I have just said something to my wife, like once while driving, I said, 2 of those 4 guys on Gold Wings will be dead in an hour. Before going on the bridge to the first key in Florida, we'd witnessed 2 of those bikers weeping over 2 dead bodies on the side of the highway. I was benefited by hearing a warming in my head and then physically pulled backwards before a 6.5 rotary valve that I was directly over, particularly my head exploded and went 80 feet into the air. That would have killed me. Many other similar things. I don't understand any of this. Craigers, thank you, buddy. That was fucking dumb. This one's better. For some background, since it matters a lot, my dad grew up in Costa Rica. He grew up in the country where it's mostly farms and agriculture. Houses are very far apart except for a few villages. This event would have taken place sometime in the mid-80s. And as he had been explaining to me by both of my parents around this time, there wasn't any phone lines, just street lamps, and that's about it. My father started working at around age 9. He would go down to the villages or centers in order to sell or deliver vegetables, as grandparents grew vegetables like lettuce, tomatoes, and more. He would very often stay out late, which would require him delivering vegetables to several restaurants. One night, he was heading back. A herd of goat was obstructing the road. To put this into perspective, he uses a little carriage like the ones ice cream vendors tend to use in Hispanic countries. So he couldn't just scoot by this, as his carriage would have blocked as well. Then from behind him, he heard a voice, which translates to, "How much for the lettuce, young man?" When my dad turned around, he said he saw a 10-foot man who looked very skinny, bordering on malnourished, with pale skin. He couldn't completely see the face. However, he stated that from the little he could see of its face was very sunken. The man was wearing overalls with a flannel shirt and a bandana on his neck and a straw hat. I know the description sounds very stereotypical. However, this does take place in the deep country, like an hour away from any city or town. According to my dad, the straw hat cast a shadow, thus he couldn't see the man's eyes. However, he could see the sunken cheeks and crooked teeth that when he talked. My dad was weirded out by how young he was. He just assumed that this very tall man, instead of something paranormal or something to be afraid of. Thus, my dad said the price, the man paid, and my dad handed him the lettuce, which, according to him, the man was able to hold with one completely comfortable. As the man walked away with the lettuce, according to Dad, the man whistled and the goats followed him. My dad then just went home. If he told my grandma or anything like that, as before, this took place decades ago in an area this took place is very isolated with no houses. To explain the area better, a lot of old palm trees are grown here. Thus, there are areas where you won't see a house for a few miles. Old palm trees, as far as he knew, were 10 feet tall, and this is about as tall as this guy was. It was just not a guess. However, he stated was tall as the ceiling on the house we were in when he told me this experience. And the ceiling was pretty high, at least 10 feet, my guess. I heard this experience months later, found out about this from a different friend who had heard my dad's story and wanted to share it with me because he had seen almost the same exact person, a 10-foot tall man who walks around at night in Costa Rica. Hello, I want to tell you about my experience. I experienced in the vicinity of Rio Abreu County. I was 15 at the time. It was 2005. My cousin and I were the only ones together. There was a car in front of us when all of a sudden I saw this black figure. It looked like trash flying in the wind. But then as it got closer, it started to look like a runner with its hands in front. Flat like runners when they are running, but it didn't look like a man. The car in front swerved. In the next few seconds, everything slowed down. The creature in front of the car to the right of the shoulder started coming at our car and jumped when it did that. It spread its arms and these wings came out. about the size of the car widthwise from the driver to passenger. Its face was freaky because it wasn't human at all and had two tiny yellow beady eyes with fangs. It reminded me of what the Mothman is supposedly to look like. The fangs looked about 3 to 6 inches. Its chest had a white V. Its fur was something similar to a deer, like grayish, white or brown. The legs were weird. It looked like goat legs. I know now they are called hawks. Its height was about 5 feet. The wings looked like they had came out of the sides, rib cage, like a glider, they insisted my aunt and uncle told me that she thinks my cousin who witnessed the being with me saw it again a few years ago. Goonies is a great movie. Stand By Me, even better. Oh, I love Big Trouble in Little China. Oh. Monster Squad was my shit when I was a little kid. Oh. Good night, Stacy. I Am Legend. I Am Legend's a good movie. Do you know Mike Patton does all the sounds for I Am Legend? Oh, The Golden Child. The Golden Child, Tim. That's what it was. The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. Golden Child's fucking great, man. I love that. Lost Boys, one of the greatest movies ever, still to this day. Whew. Thanks, San Francisco. Stephen King? Nah. Stephen King wrote better when he was a drunk and on coke, I think. He's too much of a fucking political analyst nowadays. He's got a new book coming out, though, in May. But I can't say that because, honestly, I have a book collection of Stephen King's. I love him, too. His old works. I wish that there's a book. There's 2 books, actually, that he wrote with Peter Straub. The first is Talisman, and then he wrote the sequel, The Dark House. Talisman is an amazing book. I love that book. You like these knees? You want to see my feet? You want to see these feet? Dark Tower. That's a good series. What's crazy is in Talisman, Roland is in the book. Roland, he talks about Roland a lot. Never really liked What About Bob? What about Bob? Bob? Good night, Mad Dog. Crazy and wild dog, you. SDL, today's your birthday? Happy birthday. Happy birthday to SDL. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, SDL. Happy birthday to you. No, never read that. I'll have to look at that, though. No, Salem's Lot, the new movie, compared to the old one, is way better. I love the new movie. Compared to the old one, fucking great. Well, fuck you then, SD. No, I'm just kidding. Now everybody thinks it's your birthday, SDL. So happy birthday. Too bad. We just changed your birthday. We just changed your birthday, SDL. On birthday. Happy on birthday, SDL. Happy on birthday, SDL. Happy on birthday to you. Happy on fucking birthday. Thanks, Megan. What's up, DL? How are you, buddy? Joseph Cannon. Happy birthday, Joseph Cannon. Happy birthday, Joseph Cannon. Happy birthday to Joseph Cannon. Happy birthday to you. You live in a zoo. You smell like one, too. Tales of the Dark Side used to scare the shit out of me, Ryu. Zilla, have a good night. Arabic, thank you so much, you crazy wild guy. You crazy and wild guy. Ooh, I bought a CD today. Well, it came in the mail today, finally. I love you too, Arabic. Every once in a while, I pinch my nipple. I'm like, eh. Thinking about you, Arabic. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really only kidding. I got a new CD in the mail today, and I am so fucking excited that I got it because it's pretty hard to find. And it's a deluxe album. It's got like 6 extra songs, but it is the best Marilyn Manson album ever. And I don't care what anybody says. I love Marilyn Manson. This one goes out to Cannon and his birthday. Happy birthday. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Eh. Oh, I never smelled it. Oh. It smells like fucking asshole. Smell that, guys. Just look at it. Tell me that doesn't look like it smells good. Looks like a cat's butthole. Why am I smelling it again? Oh, fuck. Oh. It's fucking gross, man. I wish I had some smelling salts or something. It's a prison pocket. Tyler 420. It's a prison pocket. Oh, it smells so bad. It's so fucking gross. Ew. Ew. Aramaic. I'm fucking tired. All right. I'm going to do the last lot lizard story for the night and then hang out for a little bit. I'm not going to bed yet, but I can't read anymore. My eyes are fucking burnt. You guys ready for this? You guys ready? Ready? Okay. We'll just end the live then. Okay. What's up, Terry? Here we go. The air hung thick and greasy. A mismatch of diesel fumes and desperation clinging to the neon-drenched asphalt of the truck stop oasis. Betty, or rather the Betty, surveyed her domain with a practiced eye. Her 3 breasts, each encased in a shimmering, sequenced bra, rose and fell with a slow predatory rhythm. They weren't just for show, of course. They were, in their own twisted way, tools of her trade. Betty was not like the other lot lizards who plied their trade here. For one, they weren't, as far as anyone could discern, packing an extra pectoral. For another, they didn't have that unnerving gleam in their eye, a glint that suggested they were calculating not the price of their services, but the optimal chewiness of your liver. She was a legend, whispered in the hushed tones around greasy spoons and CB radios. Some said she was a succubus, escaped from some forgotten corner of hell. Others claimed she was the result of a government experiment gone horribly wrong. The truth, like Betty herself, was far more complicated. Tonight, business was slow. A few weary drivers, faces etched with the miles, shuffled past, their eyes fixed on the lukewarm coffee and questionable pastries behind the counter. The Betty leaned against the chip sign that read "World's Best Chili," a claim as dubious as Betty's origin story. Idly twirling a strand of her overly teased bright red hair, inside the jukebox was wailing a mournful country tune, a soundtrack to the endless highway of lost souls. A rumble, deeper than usual, vibrated through the ground. A chrome behemoth, its grill gleaming like a predator's teeth, pulled into the lot. A driver, built like a brick outhouse and sporting a trucker hat so tall it practically kissed the sky, clambered out. He scratched his belly, surveying the scene with an air of weary resignation. And then his gaze snagged on the Betty. "Well, howdy there," he drawled, his voice thick with a Texas twang. "You're a sight for sore eyes." Betty smiled, a wide, unsettling grin that showcased teeth a shade too sharp for comfort. "And you, darling, look like you could use a little relaxation." She batted her eyelashes, a move that felt more predatory than alluring. "Reckon I could," the driver, whose name turned out to be, guess what? It's fucking Earl. Earl got a long haul ahead of me. "What kind of entertainment you offering?" "Oh, the usual," Betty purred. Her voice dropped a low rumble. "A little conversation, perhaps? Jiggy steps and whatever else your heart desires." She suddenly pointed a manicured nail toward the dark corner of the lot where the shadows seemed to writhe and beckon. Earl, bless his cotton socks, was oblivious to the ominous undertones. He puffed out his chest, a gesture of male bravado that only served to make him look more like a walking, breathing meal. Lead, by the way, purty lady, he said. Grin spread across his face. They walked towards the shadows, the jangling of Betty's excessive jewelry echoing in the stillness of the night. Once out of the glare of the neon lights, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees, and Earl felt a prick, an uneasy that he promptly dismissed the fatigue. Betty, on the other hand, was practically radiating a malevolent glee. They reached a seduction path where they reached a secluded patch of gravel where a lone flickering streetlight cast distorted shadows. So, Earl, Betty began, her voice suddenly deeper, almost guttural, what does your heart truly desire? Earl finally seemed to pick up on the shift in her demeanor. His grin faltered. He swallowed nervously. The bravado melted away like ice in the desert. Just a little, he tailed off. His eyes darted around as if searching for an escape route. Betty let out a laugh, a high-pitched cackle that bounced off the nearby trucks like a chorus of tormented souls. And then a transformation began. Her skin shimmered. The sequence of her bra seemed to writhe. And those three, well, let's just say they pulsed with an unsettling light. What followed was a dance of the damned. Earl, his mouth agape in horror, found himself unable to move as Betty began to gyrate in a manner that defied physics. Her movements were hypnotic, each step a promise of oblivion. She swayed and twirled, her form shifting and burling. The shadows mimicked her movements in a grotesque, macabre ballad. Those three breasts, no longer innocently adorned, jiggled with horror or rhythmic presence, as if each could swallow a man whole. And then she revealed her true form, her eyes glowing a infernal red, her nails lengthened into sharp razors, and with the sound of a wet rug being ripped in half, she opened her mouth, and it widened too. The other truckers, whose weary travelers, seeking a moment and respite, were oblivious to the horror unfolding in the shadows. They were too busy arguing over who had the last piece of the best chili pie. Next morning, the sun rose at the oasis, painting a grim and despair in the sickly yellow. The only evidence of the previous night encounter was a few scattered buttons, a crumpled up trucker hat, and the faint scent of burnt meat lingering in the air. The Betty, in her sequenced glimmering bra, was leaning against the world's best chili sign, her three breasts gently swaying a tune. A new truck pulled into the lot. Another driver, this one even bigger than Earl, stepped out, his eyes already fixed on Betty. The jukebox started up again, belting out another mournful country tune, and the Betty, the three-breasted siren of asphalt, smiled, her eyes twinkling with a promise of another night of devouring both loneliness and the lonely. After all, the open road was long, and the hunger was eternal, and she was ready to dance. Oh. All right, guys, I got to crash for the night. Thank you for hanging out with me. Whew. Everyone have a great night. Thank you for spending, what did we do, 2.5 hours? Thank you for spending 2.5 hours with me. And Once again, do not forget this. Look at that thing. Ew. Ugh, smell it. I wish you guys could smell this. I gotta clean it with something. It fucking stinks, dude. Ugh. I'm gonna make Tigger smell it when I'm done. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I'm sorry I'm beat. Sully, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you. And I love you all. Once again, I'm just so tired. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more, but I can't even read. Be good. Don't let your meat loaf. And I don't know. Love you. Thank you guys for everyone too. For anybody and everybody. Good night, guys.